All right. Let's get in here. Let's get the fucking vibes right. Let's get a little mace going on a Thursday morning. Perfect. Keep that going in the background. What's up, everybody? It is okay for another episode of Hoop Drunk. It is February 8th already. I hope everybody is excited. It's our second weekend of Hoop Drunk. Appreciate everybody that tuned in last weekend. We had over 250 people that watched across all platforms between both episodes. And actually the one that didn't have audio did just fine. So that's funny how that works out. This week, it's going to be a little bit different as far as my weekend goes. I'm going to be talking hoops with you guys today and Saturday morning, right around that 6:30 slot. Saturday afternoon, I'm going to be hopping on between 3 and 4 o'clock Central Standard Time, as I'm going to talk a little Super Bowl. I think I'm going to get Isaac on here to talk a little bit of props as well, and we can run through everything we need to there. Joey's working like a dog in the concrete jungle, so I will hold it down this weekend. Like I said, maybe a friend or two can give me a hand there. That would be sweet. Speaking of jumping in, we've got 63 college basketball games today. I've got a dozen that I'm going to highlight. I've already got 5 on my card. We also get a 9-game loaded NBA slate that I'm going to run through. Lines have already been moving around early this morning. Before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about a personal story that I had that some people know. It's called gambling karma. When we're gambling, it's probably as you become a nasty person sometimes. And yesterday, as I'm searching through lines, something that never happens happened. I found the UTSA team total at 50. UTSA was a 73.5 point team total. I hammered it for 5 units. I ended up on the right side. I ended up going 1 and 4 in my other bets, end up barely over the money yesterday. So funny how that works. Luckily, I ended up still cashing that. It does get graded a victory. But let's talk today's basketball. We're going to start with the streaming 6. These are going to be 6 games that are available on streaming, whether it be ESPN Plus, and then we'll have a Pac-12 network game as well. Starting with Drexel and UNC Wilmington. Pretty solid matchup here, the Dragons and the Seahawks. Wilmington seems to be a team that I talk about every single time we get in here. These are the top 2 teams in the Colonial. We get some early line movement. UNCW, they opened up laying 5. This thing is down to 3.5. They've won 7 straight in this matchup. They did lose, 7 straight home games in this matchup. Did lose to Drexel 78-63 on the road earlier this season. Drexel started conference play 7-0, but they've dropped 2 of their past 3. It's a top 25 defensive team. They're top 20 in rebounding as well. They're going to face a really potent home offense, probably one of the more potent home offenses in the country with Wilmington. However, I have to get to why those numbers are a little bit jaded. Before I jump into it, although the metrics are unrightfully boosted, one thing that does stand out to me is they turn the ball over less than 9 times per game. That's good for second in the NCAA. They're a very clean team. And for everything Drexel does well defensively, they do a poor job creating turnovers. They rank 354th at only 9.57. Really no trends that stood out to me in this one. What I was alluding to before with Wilmington, and I hate to do it, I love the Seahawks. They really haven't played at home against a lot of Division I opponents. And when they have, they're just 2-2 against the spread. They are 7-0 straight up, but have been able to take advantage of some bad teams, which has led to those inflated home metrics that I talked about. So don't get too hung up in that. Drexel, less impressive on the road. They've failed to cover in over 66% of their matchups. They've also failed to cover in 4 of their last 5. I lean Wilmington at home. I don't love the play. I don't really have a thought on the total. We've kind of seen the total sit there at the 137.5, even though we've seen a 1.5 of movement. Next one up is going to be a game that I do have some action in. Delaware, the Blue Hens. This game right now still sitting at 3.5. It did open at 4.5 in favor of Towson. Interesting game here. The total stayed at 135. The lines actually snapped back and forth. It opened at 3.5. It got to 4.5. It's now back to 3. It was showing 3.5. It's kind of all over the place. To put it simply, that's exactly how Towson plays. Their games are all over the place. The past 10 games alone, they've played in the 130s, the other half north of 145. Delaware, team that can run it up, they've scored 80 in 3 of their past 4 games. They're averaging over 75 points per game this season. Towson defense, about as solid as it gets. I think the Blue Hens can get something cooking on the road here. They're 28th in field goal percentage on the road. They don't really rely on the three-pointer too much. Towson's strength, they run teams off of the line. They don't get into track meets. I think this is a game that Delaware would love to get into a track meet. I've actually got a unit on the Delaware team total over 65.5. I see them scoring 70-plus points in this game. This is a pretty solid Delaware team. You're looking at them right now. They're 13-9, but as far as conference play is concerned, you're 6-4. You've shown some good stuff at home, but you got to play a pretty good Tiger team today. But I do think they get some points on the board, so I'm going to go over 65.5 for a single unit play. Let's talk a little Horizon League. As you all know, that's my second favorite league in the country behind the Big Ten. Oakland and Northern Kentucky. In past years, this has been a marquee matchup in this conference. This season, not so much. Northern Kentucky is kind of disappointed. They're a 500 team in conference, sub 500 overall. They're redeeming quality. This is an 8-3 team when they're at home. They're 6-3 rather against the spread against their Division I opponents. It's likely the reason the odds makers make this such a short line is because of that home cooking that they've got. This was a 70-65 finish in favor of Oakland just after New Year's. I don't know. This is one where Oakland's won 9 of 10. They've covered 3 straight, all by 4 or more points. This has been a matchup really much, dominated by Northern Kentucky in past years. I like Oakland to swing the season series and sweep them. I think this is a game where I locked in at -1 last evening, and it's currently at a pick'em, so you can really get in there and make it your own. So I'm going to take Oakland on the road in that one, just laying the 1. Nothing crazy as far as that game goes. Moving to some of our late slates in the streaming 6. This one's going to tip off about 9 o'clock our time on ESPN Plus. It's UT Arlington. The Mavericks play the Cal Baptist Lancers. Now, for those of you, that watch a lot of mid-major college basketball, you'll notice that Cal Baptist has done pretty much a 180. This is a team that was once explosive offensively and shot the 3 more than anybody else in the country, and they've completely changed their tune. We're looking at an offense that averages south of 70 points per game now, shoot 32% from 3, and at home they somehow just slash 42, 30, 68. In the era of the portal, this is where teams can completely change their identity defensively now. They hold teams under 65 points per game and hold teams to 42, 31, 72 shooting. Still trying to get kind of used to that. UT Arlington doesn't really have an identity as far as their offense goes. Right now, they're catching 3.5 points on the road. Total is 140. I see this as a parlay piece more than anything for the home side. Cal Baptist, I don't really want to lay the points. Arlington, they're 2-9 in true road games this year. They're a miraculous 1-9 when odds makers make them the dog. I'd avoid the points. Baptist can't really cover to save their lives. Arlington 8-4 against the spread away from their home floor. They're also 11-4 against the spread in their past 15. So I think this is a game where if you're going to play it, I would play Baptist as a parlay piece, or I don't really want you to stuff that money line, but you could if you really, really wanted to. So let's keep it out west, as we've got 2 more out west here in the streaming 6. Irvine versus Santa Barbara, probably the best mascot matchup we can get with the Anteaters and the Gauchos, and it's a hell of a good basketball game. It's the old guard versus the new guard in the Big West right now. Irvine, they're out to a 10-1 start in conference. They've won 4 straight by an average of nearly 15 points. Solid offensive group, I would say, as good as it gets out west. They don't really excel, however, on the defensive end. They allow 65 points per game. Opponents shoot 39, 31, 70. On the road, I said that flip. Their defense is where they excel, and especially on the road. On the road, they get better. They allow just 64 points per game, holding teams at 38, 31, 73. Also, this is the best rebounding team in the Big West, no matter how you put it. They've got a couple of 7-footers that they rotate at the center position and surround them with some really athletic guards and wings. They have a really good balance as far as their team structure goes. With Santa Barbara, you have to mention home shooting splits: 54% from the field, 41% from three. That's outstanding. They're 7-4 straight up at home. They've only covered twice this year at the Thunderdome, however. Irvine's 8-6 away from home, but they're 10-4 against the spread. It's been pretty impressive. This is, they've also covered 4 of 5 single-digit lines. This is a line I feel comfortable laying with Irvine. I want to see what some other people say today as we creep closer to game time. It's a game that, the line opened at 4.5. It's now down to 3.5. So we'll kind of see how that line plays out through the rest of the day. I don't have any action immediately on it. Rounding out our streaming 6, we are going to get out of the mid-major realm. I usually don't try to do this in the streaming 6, but in this case, we could talk a little Washington State, Oregon State. Currently, Washington State laying 9 after opening, Washington State laying 9 after opening 8.5, 135.5 point total. I'm trying to think back, and I was racking my brain this morning and last night when I was going through this. The last time I talked about Washington State basketball, 16 years since they've earned the right to dance. As it sits, they're in a terrific position for an at-large bid. I think they are 16-6. Yeah, 16-6 right now. They've played solid in conference. You would say water's probably finding its level. They're 7-4 after a 9-2 non-conference run. But this is a terrific spot for them. They've won and covered in 6 of their past 7. They've got a top 100 offense, top 75 defense, and a top 75 rebounding team. They rank 38th in turnover percentage. This is a good all-around team that they've got coming out of Pullman. The metrics do slip up slightly on the road. They've held their own. They're around 500 against the spread and straight up. Oregon State, on the other hand, 500 overall, 11-2 at home. It's hard to find a reason to back them straight up in this spot. Obviously, you get quite a bit in the points when you're getting up into the 9s. Although they've lost 7 of their past 10, they've actually covered 7 of their past 10. So on this one, I'm going to focus on the total, and all the trends to me point towards an overplay. I know we saw a low scoring affair between these two earlier in the year in Pullman, but in the past 12 matchups between these two, 9 have been cleared as far as the total is concerned. These two are playing much different basketball than the matchup that we saw originally. This group, as far as the Cougars go, they've gone over and 4 of their past 5. They have averaged 156 points per game. They're regularly playing games into the 140s and 150s this season. On the Beaver side, they've also gone over in 4 of their last 5. However, they've now gone over in 6 straight at home since their last matchup. The defense is allowing 80 points per game. We've seen the offense push north of 70 in about half those matchups. This comes down to, can OSU get the rock moving on offense? I think they can. I think they get enough to score. I've got a bet on this one. It's over 135.5. That is my single unit play on that one. Moving on to our TV matchups. It is kind of a bleak night as far as the TV matchups are concerned. This is going to sound a little bit lame. We're going to start it. Memphis and Temple. Memphis laying 7.5 against the Owls. Looks like it's ticked down to 7. It came off of 6.5 at open, and the total has been solid at 150. Like I said, first of many lackluster games. Temple's lost 7 straight. Memphis just got back in the win column for the first time in almost 3 weeks. I don't know why Memphis can't seem to figure it out. Now, their win, then they came back. Yes, it's great that you got the win, but you were double-digit favorites and you won by 2. This is similar to Penny Hardaway teams of yesteryear. The group gets up and down the floor. They get 75-plus possessions per game. They average 80 points, but their average is shooting the basketball. Turnovers, careless fouls are a problem. They're 312th in giving it up at nearly 14 times per game, and they're 304th in defensive fouls. Temple, not impressed on either side of the basketball, but they've got an ace up their sleeve. They've got the points in this matchup, and that's up to 7 now. Memphis is awful against the number. They've covered only 30% of the time this season. Temple's not incredible, but a 4-4 home record is good enough. You won't find me backing the Owls in this one, but, they're dog shit. However, I don't see an angle that I really like on Memphis. The line movement doesn't do anything for me, and really the total doesn't either. Let's move out of that game because we actually do have a mid-major game in the next slot that's going to be on ESPNU at 6 o'clock. Samford and UNC Greensboro. This is going to be about as solid of a matchup as you could ask for. Open Greensboro laying 1. They're now laying 1.5. 152.5 ticked down to 152. I was very wrong in last week's episode when I claimed that I smelled hints of fraudulence in this Samford team. I was very, very wrong. They completely worked the Chattanooga Mocs last weekend, blew them out as underdogs. I'm not taking them lightly in this one, but it's another daunting matchup. The Spartans, they're just a game back in the Southern standings. This would split the season series. Samford won the first matchup at home 79-70 back in early January. Greensboro, they were an astonishing 58% from the line in that game, so I don't know how much I read into it. But now they're at home. They shoot north of 76% from the stripe at home. They're 9-1 overall. If you could point out a shortcoming for Samford, it is their 6-3 record away from home because obviously they have dominated when they're in their own building, and all 3 of their losses have come on the road. So it's an easy one to cherry pick. Their offensive production that goes from 88 points per game on 49, 40, 72 down to 72 points per game at 44, 34, 61. They're great at home, 14-0 at home, 16-0 as favorites, but it's going to be damn near a pick 'em by the time this thing ends. And right now it's moving in Greensboro's favor. The Coliseum's going to be absolutely rocking tonight. It's with how shaky Samford can be at the line. I don't know. It's a game that I'd be foolish to fade Samford again, but I would definitely lean UNC Greensboro if you twisted my arm. That's going to be a great matchup. I would strongly consider watching that game if you have the chance to. Those are 2 teams that you could absolutely, I would say, the odds are you'll see one of those 2, if not both. If Samford can win enough games and lose maybe in their conference title, maybe they could get an at-large, but that is neither here nor there. Let's talk about a game that I do have a bet in. FAU is traveling to UAB. This thing opened 5.5, currently 4.5, 5 teetering, depending where you get it. Nobody's struggling to cover games like FAU. They are, road games like FAU. They're 1-4 against the spread in those contests. And there's really no statistical drop-off. It's just they're not able to cover the line. The last matchup between these 2 was an 86-73 finish, but that line closed north of 15, so you just still didn't cover. This time, we do see a 10-point favor, or a 10-point swing, rather, in favor of the home side, which is kind of crazy. But FAU has just not been all that impressive. When Stooley was in here a few weeks ago, we talked about it. They're in trouble as far as I don't think they're going to make it out of their conference tournament. This is a big test, even if the Owls are struggling. FAU has done a good job demolishing bad teams, but I think highly of UAB. Jelly Walker, even though he's gone, he kind of instilled this confidence and swagger that UAB can be a team to beat. They had absolutely no swagger through the 2010s and early 20s. They don't wow you on either side of the ball, but they just prove when the game's tight, they usually play pretty damn well. They've been able to cover 6 of their 7 games that have closed within 10 this season with them as dogs. I really like how they've played. I leaned Blazers when it opened at 5.5. It ticked down to 4.5. I was able to lock in 5. I got 5 right at a unit. That'll be an interesting game. I'm super excited. Could UAB win outright? They absolutely could. Do I expect them to? Probably not. It'd be a tough one for me to bet that. It's going to be like plus, I would say plus 160, plus 165 if you're lucky, and maybe you get some good peer-to-peer lines out there if you are trying to roll the dice with the dog. Let's keep it moving. We've got 3 more games in our nationally televised slate. Let's start Arizona State and Colorado. This is Colorado's been an interesting story. They get a little revival in football, a little revival in basketball. This thing opened with them laying 12.5. It's moved to 13.5. Totals ticked down a half point from 148 to 147.5. Big time yin yang here as far as the matchup goes. We get a top 10 shooting team in the country that averages over 81 points per game in Colorado. ASU, on the other hand, they rank outside the top 300 in pretty much every offensive metric you can think of. Colorado has not lost at home up to this point. I'm doubtful that that's going to happen today. They're not only winning at home, but they're 9-3 against the spread. They've been really, really good. They've lost back-to-back games against Utah and Wazoo. They need to win this game if they want to keep an at-large opportunity still out there. I don't know how good that opportunity is actually going to be. This is a 3-point loss for them in Tempe on January 4th. This is a game, again, that you can't have any shenanigans. You need to win this game, especially as 13.5-point favorites. Luckily, ASU looks like they're giving up. They've lost and failed to cover miserably now in 4 straight. It started with a 19-point loss as 9.5-point favorites, a 13-point loss when they're laying 2.5, a 9-point loss in a pick'em, and their most recent was a 15-point loss to Cal as 2-point favorites. I lean Colorado in this matchup. I didn't pull the trigger. It's a lot of points for a Colorado team here that has not looked terrific in the past week or so. But again, Arizona State, borderline giving up. If this thing looks sloppy out of the gates, you should probably bet Colorado live anything under 20, because if it does get ugly, Colorado's a team that could throttle them and really, really, really put some points on the board, which would be super interesting to see how high they could get it to go, because we saw games last night going up into the hundreds. That's for sure. Some of us bet St. Louis to go under 74, and they ended up with 105. So that's how she goes. Moving right along, keeping it out west. I'm going to keep it out west pretty much all day today. It seems like it's all out west. We get Washington and Oregon. This thing opened Washington catching 6. They're now catching 7. The total, however, ticked down from 158.5 all the way down to 153.5. Probably as heavy line movement as you're going to get. 5 points is crazy. I don't have to tell you that. I understand the original line. These are top 100 offenses, bottom 100 defenses. It was a low-scoring affair. Ducks took this one 76-74. This is a game where we saw the Huskies shoot 54% from the line at home. It's not going to happen again. It was just an absolute disaster. But Washington, they're 29th in road free throw percentage. They shoot 10% better than they do at home. Explain that to me. That doesn't make any sense. I think the movement may be a bit of an overreaction to the first matchup, paired with the Ducks playing back-to-back games in the 130s and 140s. Washington's cleared this total in 4 straight games, and they've averaged 174 points in those games. I see this one turning into a track meet. I lean the total going over, but I can't go against that line movement when it's moving 5 points. That's as strong of line movement as it gets. Let's wrap up our matchups with San Francisco, just like we did last week. San Francisco playing Pepperdine. They are currently laying 9.5, opened at 8.5, total at 145.5. The Dons take a nice balanced attack into the Firestone Fieldhouse tonight. Top 50 offense, top 10 defense, put this team in a great position to probably run with the best in the conference. And we saw they were playing tight with Gonzaga last week. They could absolutely upset them down the stretch. It would not surprise me. In this matchup, I am going to be looking and ended up taking the Dons team total. In this one, these two, they're combined 1-9 against the spread in their last 10. Don't try to pick a winner as far as the number goes. Looking at the total, I like it over for a few reasons. First, they covered this number in 9 of their past 12. With 3 of those games, they failed 2 coming right in a row. They had kind of a cold stretch there. Second, their opponents have allowed 85 points or 85 plus 3 times in the past 2 weeks. The Wave, they ranked 357th in opponent field goal, 358 in opponent 3-point percentage. The Dons, they should be able to have it their way, so to speak. They're the 9th best shooting team in the country. And lastly, they're facing a team that fouls more than 20 times per game on a regular basis. Luckily, San Francisco's solid at the line. They're 76 overall, 74% on the road. Give me the Dons up to 78.5. I think they crack into the 80s. Ended up locking that one in at 77 flat. And that's going to run us through our game previews. As far as my card is concerned at the moment, Oakland laying 1 for a unit against Northern Kentucky. Delaware over 65.5. Team total against Towson. UAB +5 against FAU at home. Washington State, Oregon State over 135.5. San Francisco over 77. Before we get out of here, let's just run through the NBA lines tonight because we do have 9 games. Golden State is on the road against Indiana. That is a 6.5 point line that just moved out from 5.5. Totals ticked down a couple points there. San Antonio is on the road at Orlando. They're 11-point dogs. Total is sitting right pretty much at 225.5. Cleveland, Brooklyn. This one's interesting. Keep an eye on the line here, out from 3.5 to now 6 in favor of Cleveland on the road. 226.5 down to 224 as well. I'm sure there's some injury news there. Dallas, New York. Dallas laying 1.5 now out to 4.5. 232.5 down to 229. I'm going to assume again injuries. Chicago and Memphis has been sitting right around that Chicago -5. It's now out to 6. Total's gone from 211.5 to 215.5. Milwaukee and Minnesota tonight. Right now, Milwaukee's laying 1.5. I do not feel confident in my Bucks. 228.5 down to 228. Utah, Phoenix. Phoenix is laying 6, now down to 6.5 actually. 242 ticks up to 243.5. Detroit and Portland, yuck. Portland's laying 6, 230 down to 228 from open. And our nightcap will be Denver and the Lakers. Denver opened at 2. They're now outside of 3. They're out to 3.5, 229.5 to 230. Alrighty. Well, that's going to do it for me. Just under 30 minutes, just how we like it. Hope you guys have a terrific Thursday. We're going to talk to you on Saturday morning and talk a little more basketball. We'll get into some Super Bowl stuff. We'll talk to you later.